I know all the secret entrances now.
Okay, good evening everyone. Welcome councillors, members of the public and others, officers, to this meeting of the Finance and General Purposes Committee. Wednesday the 18th of December. Could I just say at the beginning that we've got Abby Taylor, Chair of Folk and Ale, is here to speak under item number 9. I'm proposing we bring that forward in the agenda so Abby doesn't have to sit through the whole of the meeting.
I'd like to second
So have it straight after public participation, if that's okay. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. Thank you. So first of all, apologies for absence received.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have Councillor Breen has a travel commitment and Councillor Tomlins has an illness.
Item 2, declarations of interest. To receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest from members in respect of business to be transacted. Do we have any? Nothing? Thank you. Item 3 is minutes of the Finance and General Purposes Committee held on the 20th of November. To receive and approve those minutes and consider any matters arising. Shall I take this page by page? Page 1. Page 2, page 3, and page 4. So we're happy to receive and approve them? Happy to propose. Seconded. All those in favour? So those are received and approved. Item 4 is public participation. This is a chance for members of the public to make representations at the meeting in respect of business on the agenda. Do we have any?
No request.
No request. Okay, so in that case we shall move on to item 9, which is discussion of potential non-financial support for the Folk and Ale Festival. And we're very pleased to have Abby Taylor, who's the chair of the Folk and Ale.
Thank
Wants
you.
to come up to the
I was going to say,
table.
talk to the back of everybody.
So we can talk to you.
Thank you.
So we had a discussion at the last meeting about fees for the forecourt, etc. And I think we all recognise how important all of these events are for the town, for the health and vitality of business and prosperity, etc. But I think, Abby, you wanted to talk to us about how we can help you in a non-financial sense.
So the first thing I wanted to do was just say we still haven't had confirmation of our booking for the forecourt, and obviously we do need that in order we can go ahead and start setting up contracts with our vendors and our entertainment acts. So
Yeah, it was with the fees being reviewed, but I am in the process of that.
Brilliant. So on the subject of fees, am I safe to assume that we will fall into the community event bucket, therefore, for the Folk and Ale Festival next year?
I think we're all agreed that will be the case, because what we're just clarifying at the moment is whether SCEA
Yes.
needs to become or can become a CIC or a CIO or a registered charity, and to act as an umbrella organisation for the main events,
Yes.
including Folk and Ale. And if that's the case, then that will happen. But I think in any event, we'll probably need a year of transition.
Yes.
During which time the 4 key events, I think, unless I'm mistaken, will continue to receive
what we agreed was a 12-month dispensation for a number of named events. So that's where we are today. So I wouldn't want to, in terms of process, jump ahead of that, because we are only a committee.
Yes.
And it has to be an STC decision.
Yeah.
So we have to take that to STC.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
No, I fully understand.
Ideally, we would have
But for
decided
me,
already.
obviously, from
Yes,
a budgetary
I
point of view, there's a
Yeah.
significance difference.
Yeah.
I think it's likely, but
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, that's important.
And the only other thing was, and I know again it's not necessarily a subject for this committee, but
Right.
whether I can confirm that although we received funding from the Tollbridge Fund in 24, whether our request will be heard in March for 25 funding. Obviously the application's in, all the forms have been filled in. I just want to make sure that we're
As
slated
referred
on
to
the
this.
agenda.
So where we are with that, because it's an STBF Finance Committee issues to start with, but then it will go to the full STBF. We haven't agreed the budget for that yet. Grants are only one element of
Yes,
the
yeah.
full package. And for example, worst case scenario, if we can't award any grants, then we will want to take people through a process if we can't award grants. If we are going to award grants, then we need to know how much we're dealing with. So
Yeah,
it's a little bit ahead of the curve.
it is. I just want to make sure that we're
Yeah.
on that
Yeah,
March
but in
agenda.
terms of the process,
Yeah.
March is
Yeah.
the first touch point in terms of
Excellent.
grant applications.
So obviously, as I've spoken at the previous two full council meetings, funding for all festivals is an issue. We've lost DDC and KCC grants this year, and obviously we rely heavily on local business sponsorship, and in the current financial situation, unsurprisingly, we're expecting that to be lower than previous years. So we're having to kind of think, I don't want to say outside the box, but sort of certainly think differently. So as much as fundraising, it's very much a cost-cutting exercise this year for us. So the sorts of things that would really help us out, the first one on my list is free electricity.
Yeah.
I'll let that land. But I'd like, and again, I presume all of this would be minuted so that the council can, and I understand you're not able to give decisions now, but just to have those conversations. Toilet, and just to say as well, that's, you know, a previous year's precedent, so that's not anything different to what we've had previously. So that's not a new request, actually, that's the same request as we've always had. As is keeping the toilets open later. Obviously, if we can reduce the amount of portable toilets that we need to provide, it helps us out. So having those facilities open longer is a big benefit. And in addition to that, because we're not going to be using the quayside in 2025, we want to request permission to access the ground floor toilets of the Guildhall, because we won't have accessible toilets otherwise. And that's obviously something critical to provide them for the festival. Gazebos, again, that's something we've had previously, so just confirmation that we can do that again. And then the new request really is the tables and chairs. It's a huge expense. It's about £1,100 we pay in table and chair hire. And there's a Guildhall, beautiful place here, full of tables and chairs. So that's the main one for me, is if we can access that resource, we're firstly going to save ourselves a lot of money, and also have much more secure storage for those items overnight, because we can take them from the Guildhall and return them to the Guildhall. So those were my 5 headlines. If anybody could think of anything else that the council could potentially provide in a non-financial way that would help the festival out, I am all ears.
So the tables and chairs in the lock-up, the round tables.
So I think
and
we
the
use those
plastic-
anyway, but it's actually, I noticed you have quite a large stock of,
Oblong.
yeah,
The long ones.
yeah.
The plastic.
Obviously they need to be weatherproof, but they are plastic, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What numbers, so on that particular aspect, how many are you talking about?
I'd need to go back and look at, we used Canterbury Catering hire last year, so I'd need to go back and
Yes,
look at
that
what
would be
number of
key.
units that was.
I think we need to, Mr Chairman, we've got to be very careful about making any commitments,
Yes.
because obviously whatever we agree to yourself, any other event organisation come knocking on our door and request the same items. So if we make a precedent with yourself, we can't get out of supplying the same items to other event organisers as well. And just recently we've had an STBF meeting. The sort of financial situation is difficult, let's post it like that, and I think everybody's got to understand that, you know, that as well as the events being difficult to put on because of funding, running a very, very large building like this with the number of staff we've got is very difficult as well. And if it becomes a decision between laying off staff or having events, then we'll have to draw the line somewhere.
And so I hear what you're saying. The only thing I would say in response to that is that the whole point of today's conversation was ways that the council could help us without having any financial impact on any of the funds. And I think the new paradigm that you're using for Guildhall charges almost sets the demarcation for me. So if you fall into a community or a charity event bucket, then you should have access to the, should we call them freebies? If you're paying £300, you can afford to buy your own tables and chairs.
And I would say that we can, from my perspective, and I know the Mayor's comments, but you know, just as equally with us 16 councillors, other councillors could say actually we want to have bespoke depending on the event's concerned. So what I'm not trying to do personally today is make any decision. It's actually about gathering the information from you to allow us as a group, which will have to be a full STBF, to eventually make the right decision.
So let me
make a decision.
So I'll take an action to get the Canterbury contract out from last time and actually see how many units it was. And that'll help for starters.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a fraction of your stock. You may be sitting on loads of plastic furniture, I don't know.
But for instance, the out of hours working in that, we didn't realise previously the property manager that we've now employed in previous years, none of that was costed up of what it was costing the council and thereby costing the public. And it's our duty to make sure that the public's money is spent correctly. So just to explain the situation to everybody, if for your event we have to employ somebody for an extra 8 hours after their normal hours, that cost has to be found from somewhere.
So why would that be the case? Because obviously we're a 100% unpaid volunteer run festival and our volunteers do all of the grafting as far as I'm aware.
You said you wanted the Guildhall open after
just the toilets.
ground floor.
Even
Somebody's got to undertake that, so we've got to employ somebody to undertake that.
So this evening the doors open?
Yeah, so I think the thing is, Abby, if there's activity within the Guildhall on any given day, then it has to be staffed.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, if folk and ale is the only activity, then actually there's an additional cost to the council as a result, directly as a result of folk and ale. So I don't even know, it might have to be open for a wedding, for example.
That's right.
Yeah, so the only thing to say is that we finish the outdoor activity normally by about 7:30, so it's not extremely late, and then everything normally moves into the pubs.
It's just also, I don't know if you're aware, and the members of the public that might be watching this, but the Guildhall, similar to Spa and the Co-op, we've been suffering a large amount of antisocial behaviour. So we're now, for evenings, we're now employing separate security detail.
So we will be employing our own security, and I've already got a meeting with DDC to discuss event safety. So that's definitely in hand.
But to protect the Guildhall and the property within the Guildhall, if it was open particularly for an event, we would have to employ somebody to cover that event with the Guildhall being open.
And that wouldn't, you don't think that the security that we would be employing would suffice?
Well, your security would have a detail. All security are briefed at the start of any event, and I've done events management, so they're briefed at the beginning of the event. Your security will be briefed for your event. They won't have the keys or the briefing to protect the Guildhall or our property. So if something happens on our property, our security detail know exactly where to go and what to do to turn off water, to set, turn off the electrics, to do things like that. So, but all I'm saying is there's not a blanket policy that everything will be okay. Your security can cover our property and things like that.
Do you use an external organisation?
We do.
Well, we'll be using an external organisation. I'm sure there's some.
But I just wanted to explain the situation that the council's in, because in the past there's somebody here that worked here called Kevin Cook, and he used to do excessive hours off his own back, and I think everybody needs to know that that's no longer available. So.
I think, I've been a volunteer at Folk and Ale, and lugged the chairs and tables from there to here and back again. And I'm sure that will carry on, whether it's from there or from here. But I think we need to check on the dates and whether the Guildhall's open anyway. And I think the key thing we want to be as helpful as
Yeah.
possible, we don't want to be negative. too
No,
negative,
no. just explain.
because these events are important, so I think
Yeah.
what would be helpful, having heard what you said, is if you put in writing
Yeah.
your precise
Yes.
requirements,
Yeah.
dates,
Yeah.
times, etc., and then perhaps write to the town clerk, and then perhaps have a meeting with the committee or yourself and the property manager, just to talk about the logistics.
Yeah, no problem.
So if that helps.
Yeah, I think that takes us a step forward, and
I
that's,
think it's-
that's the important
It's
bit.
much better to sit down and just
Yeah.
do
Yeah,
this and
exactly.
talk,
Yeah.
isn't it? Than, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely.
Okay.
Anything else you need from me? Obviously, you've got my email. Colin, you've got my phone number, so if anybody needs anything, just drop me a line.
Who's the headline this year?
So, so I've managed to procure a band called Wickenwood for one night, and I'm trying my hardest to get AD Scruffs, who are a Bristol-based band, but obviously with finances being quite tight, we're wrangling a little bit over fees. But yeah, some new acts, which hopefully,
great.
you know,
Great.
Good. All right. Thanks.
brilliant.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you. Oh gosh.
That's all right. Man down.
You can have that one.
I know, the thing is, it's probably worth it, like. Yeah, can I have that one first? Thank you guys.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thanks, Irene. Bye-bye. Okay, thanks for that. So now we move on to item 5, which is payment schedules and finances. Now, these come to FGP in order that we can give them more scrutiny, so that we don't have to go through the details at council, because council have delegated that job to us. So I propose we take each of these in turn, starting with 5A, which is attachment 2A, which is the payments schedule approvals. So 2A, first of all, is there anything on there which you wish to comment on or highlight?
I'm surprised it costs £800 for the gardening at Bay Hall, if that's what it costs.
Bay Hall Garden.
Oh, yes, it was a bit more than, it was literally clearing it when it was overgrown for quite a number of months, and it was preparing it for the viewings.
Which was successful.
Yeah.
Okay, any comments?
I suppose it's all broad question around, obviously we're now filling in with temporary staff, aren't we, for caretaking. How does that compare with what we were paying for an employee in terms of the increase? Maybe it's the same, maybe it's less. I doubt it.
Well, it's going to be more per hour, but the on-costs that the employees are paid are not there, so it will even out to a certain extent.
It will be
I
close.
haven't done a full
That's good. That's good to know. It's good to know that we're going to.
It's about the same.
It's likely to be obviously at maybe 5 or 10% more, but not much more than that usually. But as you said, the on-costs are covered by
And also with these agency staff, we don't have to employ them for the whole.
Yeah.
No, of course not.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
we can choose
a very
our
specific.
few hours,
That's
yeah,
true.
yeah.
And just to, sorry Chair, just to explain, the town clerk, myself and the property manager are reviewing the whole situations. We're not running straight into like a recruitment programme.
Yeah.
Let's not do that. That's what we've done before. It's failed several times, so we now need to have a strategy going forward of what we're going to do with the caretaking staff. So the as soon as the property manager, probably early in the new year, comes back, the town clerk and I will review that and then bring that to committee so that you know what's happening. That's okay.
Can I just ask, this is fun, this is the caretaker. We also now have a member of staff as our long-term sick. Is this likely to be a situation that we're going to be employing agency staff for as well? I'm assuming we'll have to.
That agency staff member is covering that member of staff.
Oh, right, so we're not having to pay twice?
No.
No, that's helpful to know.
Well,
Thank you.
it is a double payment where we're paying sick pay.
Yeah,
It will be a double.
of course, yes, but I mean,
Yeah.
you're stuck, that's the contractual situation anyway.
Mm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So can we move on to attachment 2B?
Are you going to take a vote on these at the end of the set,
Or individually.
Do we need to vote on each of them?
we will do?
Just to approve them. Okay, should we just vote on attachment 2A to begin with?
Yep.
Okay, seconded. All those in favour? Thank you. Now we'll move on to 2B, or not to be. Approval list, expenditure transactions, anything on this schedule?
I noticed that Councillor Wiles got some money from the council. How did
I
that
did.
get?
Well, I noticed that. I did notice that, yes.
But I have laid out probably 50 or 100 of my own money as well. So it's not over generous.
I can't see what you're talking about.
For the telephone.
That was
B.
previously.
It's 1409.
Don't worry,
Should be
Colin.
further down, second page.
Yes.
I propose we accept it.
Okay, all those in, I propose we accept 2B.
Yeah.
All those in favour?
That's 2C.
Now we move on to 2C, which is the bank account reconciled statement for November.
It's only a reconciled account, so I'm
Yeah.
very happy to propose that. There shouldn't be any issues with
All
that.
those in
That's
favour
the
of
checks being
Yeah,
made.
okay, that's agreed. Next one is 2D, which is the cash book financial statement. Any comments on this?
Excuse me, what was the item on the drill hall?
Oh, yeah.
155, drill hall, 12,775.
Oh, that's the, that's the total rent received to date.
Okay.
No, let's start at 2C, but it's got about 4 pages.
Okay, anything else on?
And that's 2D.
Then you've got some pages, I think.
This is 2D.
I don't seem to have a full agenda.
You found it?
No.
Where is it?
Anything else on 2D?
No.
So I'll propose we accept that.
Second that.
All those in favour? And finally, 2E, which is the budget variance report for the end of November. Any comments on this one?
I suppose, are there any points that you need to raise on this, Karen? Is there anything that we need to be alerted to when I've looked through it? And
No, I think what I've done is raise those in other reports, so,
Okay.
like forecasting reports,
Yeah.
we've been raising those.
This agenda is chaired by Councillor Csuka.
Could I just ask a question
Yeah.
on the P22 electricity charge? So that's the final payment, is it now?
Yes, the boat moved out
Thank
in
you.
It's gone for good.
October, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I forgot to ask you that yesterday.
Up for sale if you want to buy it.
My garden pond isn't big enough.
Oh, shame.
Maybe the Navy will buy it.
Yeah, US maybe.
They can't
Okay.
afford.
So, happy with
Well,
2E?
Yep.
I'm happy to propose that.
I'm second that.
Second that. All those in favour?
Yep.
Thank you. Right, we now move on to item 6, which is the draft budget for 25-26. We looked at this at the last meeting, and this is the second iteration, if you like. So Karen has gone away and looked at trying to achieve a target of 5% for the precept uplift. Karen, do you want to talk through this? Your report's very clear, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've listed the changes
Yeah.
made, so they're all involved with a bit of explanation underneath. Some things have gone down, some things have gone up, but on top of that report, we received from Dover District Council yesterday the proposed tax base for 25-26, which is 2204.94, which is an uplift on this year's tax base.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've done a calculation. The precept figure in the budget proposed in front of you is 316,957.82.
Yeah.
If we use the new tax base, we get an extra 13,500.
Excellent.
So that's good news.
That's very good
And it
news.
might change, you know,
Yes.
the discussion.
So
So
the preset goes up to 330,
330 is goes down.
330,520.
and but the increase for a Band D household is the
Yes,
same.
the increase would be 5%,
15.
as illustrated. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. So the tax base has gone up because of new properties.
Yeah, obviously it's only a suggested tax base and it won't be confirmed until the end of March.
Yeah.
But it hardly ever changes, so.
Yeah. Okay. So I went through this budget. It's pleasing that some of the headings are have gone down in previous years, so it shows that we're looking prudently at our finances. And the fact that this is a 5% increase or £15 per average household, I don't think that's an unreasonable increase to levy on the people's salary. So any comments on this draft budget, Councillor Pennington?
Oh, thank you. No, I just want to say I'm grateful for the work that's been done.
Yeah.
I feel fairly comfortable. I mean, one would always like not to have to increase it at all, but I feel fairly comfortable that with the 5% precept that we can continue to work within tight guidelines, but to do our job and that we're heading in the right direction.
So,
Councillor Csuka, then Councillor Black.
just more a practical reflection on the opportunity that's just been put in front of us of potentially another 13,000 or thereabouts. The question is, because we should be going to the full STC with a view, it would be good to sort of think about how we might want to play that. I mean, there may be stuff that might still come out of the woodwork between now and then in any case, but the options is that, you know, the preset, our preset could be reduced slightly. We could reduce the STBF demand slightly. So there are things we have a variance around in terms of what we can do.
Councillor Black.
Yeah, it was just, thank you, Karen, for giving me more, but I couldn't find where the HIPS reserve was. Is this in these papers? Because I couldn't see it, then that may be me being a bit thick. But thank you for the data.
The addition to the HIPS reserve is definitely
Yes, I saw that.
here.
Was I asked you about that, yes.
Yeah, the existing reserve is set up within the general fund.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, the bank balance is made up of the reserve
Right, that's why I didn't spot
and
it.
the current budget.
Okay,
So,
I'll know where to look next time, and thank you.
Yeah, they're in the edge system. It lists them out at the end of the cash book, I believe. So
Okay.
the total reserve will be listed out separately for each
Thank
one.
you, that's helpful, thank you. But you did actually write to me and tell me what the sums were, which was very helpful.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think a lot of these, two things. One thing, to follow up on what Councillor Csuka said, that's a very good observation, and thank you for bringing that forward. But I think we should see this changing the precept as perhaps a contingency that we will have there, and to say that 13,000, or we could slightly reduce the precept to take into account that 13,000. The two factors on that is, one factor, it's not going to be agreed or approved until March, and the second one is, if we did that, we would be even tighter than we already are. So we know the situation we were in previously, the precept that the RFO had previously suggested we should be you know, charging, and we've gone for this magic 5%, which quite luckily the RFO has been able to cut off corners here and add corners there. And I would just like to say a big thank you to both to her and the town clerk, because they're trying to run something that is each year consuming more and more costs that are going up dramatically, and some of these contractor costs are unbelievable, but despite that, I mean, there's not much we can do in this world. But the second thing is that I think we should have that contingency. So we've got that as an inbuilt contingency, and let's keep that there as a buffer.
That was my point about just having a conversation that leads rather than just
Exactly.
tumbleweed moment of
Oh yeah, that's it.
in the background.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm comfortable with 5%, and that was a figure that I was very strongly in favour of when we first discussed it. And I'm really glad that Council's been able to produce a budget that mirrors that sort of intention. So that's brilliant. And notwithstanding the fact that we don't really have a contingency for things going wrong for this council, it's a contingency.
Gives us a bit of support, doesn't it? Really?
I mean, we do have the operating reserve,
We do.
which is going to be 60,000.
Yes.
But the budget also relies on the balance brought forward, which I put in as 35,000. If that for any reason is lower,
Yes.
Exactly.
you know, then we would need that 30,000.
Yeah.
And if you looked at the overheads on the operating costs on a monthly basis, the operational contingency we've got wouldn't last us very long in a true emergency. So we've all got to bear that in mind. You know, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable with 5%, and it gives us a bit of leeway in case of unexpected items coming up. So is that the general view of the committee as well?
That's
That's my view.
that's it.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Pennington. You had something?
Sorry, I thought
No,
I was ready to vote, but I assumed that.
You're ahead of yourself. I had a few minor queries, if that's possible, just to talk through. So, Black Lane allotments are showing as zero, both for income and expenditure. Is that because they're now going to be ring fenced?
Yes. Yeah. So any balance we have at the end of the year won't go back into that pot. It will go into reserve.
Okay, that's fine. I just noted Guildhall Square income is almost doubled next year over this year, which is a good progress. I wondered, Karen, if you could, on the income budget, 450 to 452, reimbursement by STBF, Museum, Guildhall, etc. Would you be able to just run through what those columns mean?
That is where Sandwich Town Council pays the salaries for all the staff in the first instance, and then an apportionment is calculated, and then the reimbursement is made by the Tollbridge Fund. So the Guildhall account, the Tollbridge Fund account, and the museum account all pay something back, but the museum account only pays back ad hoc items, not salary items. I just add. So the salaries coming back from the Guildhall and the Tollbridge Fund accounts. The Town Council and the Tollbridge Fund do share a lot of costs that are also recalculated at the end of the year. So there might be other items in those lines as well, other than the salaries.
Are there any other queries on specific lines or columns? So if that's the case, can I say thanks to Jill and to Karen for all the hard work on this, and it's I'm very comfortable with it. So I'm happy to propose that we accept this budget for 25/6.
There's two recommendations there, Mr. Chairman. So I just wanted to say, should we be adopting the first two recommendations?
So the first recommendations there are no changes being proposed, I take it, so are we happy to approve this draft budget to go to council next week? I propose.
Yeah, I'll second that.
All those in favour? Councillor Black's abstaining. Is there a?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be December, but we
Yeah.
missed the December
Yes.
deadline.
Yeah, just to be clear, this will be to an extraordinary meeting in early January, in mid-January. Okay. So the second item is, well, are we happy to agree that we have
That's
an
what it is,
extraordinary
yeah.
meeting?
The
think
first
we'll just agree
item's
that.
no changes, the second one is to approve it.
Okay, so we agree we should have an extraordinary meeting in early to mid-January.
Yeah.
I agree to that.
You agree to that?
Extraordinary meeting.
Okay, thank you again for that. So then we move on to item 7, which is the priorities and action log for this committee. This is attachment 6, sorry, attachment 5. Are there any comments on this? If you recall, this was simplified following a meeting I had with the town clerk, so hopefully it's a much clearer exposition of where we are and where we hope to go. Any comments on this?
I thought it's much better. It's a great improvement. I'm glad it's been undertaken. So
Okay.
I'd like to propose acceptance of it in its current state.
I'll second that. All those in favour? Okay, so that's agreed, thank you. So the next item is item 8. Budgets 24/5, allocation of council staff to budgets. This is a report put forward by Councillor Breen. He wanted to table this at the previous meeting, but it's coming to this meeting for a more in-depth discussion. So this just sets out how individual council staff are allocated between the 3 headings of STBF, Guildhall, STBF and STC. And I think Councillor Breen wants us really to discuss whether these allocations are reasonable, accurate, and if not, how they should be perhaps redesigned. So are there any comments on this?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, as I said previously on this, I mean, this is something that we wouldn't have individual knowledge of really. I'm not quite sure how Councillor Breen's come to these exact figures and calculations, so, but I would have to be led by the town clerk or possibly the RFO as to whether or not these figures are correct, based on the split of the work from these members of staff. So
Is this these figures you provide?
Well, no, they're figures that we use, because basically you cannot, in the scheme of day-to-day operations, we can't all spend time stopping and thinking, are we doing work for the Guildhall, Tonbridge Fund or STC? So these are broadly what we see as proportion of time that we're spending. You know, we can't say that they're accurate to, you know, the hour or anything, but in our experience, this is a true representation of the proportion of time that we're spending.
I suppose the question is, where do we want to go with this report? And in the absence of Councillor Breen, it's difficult to determine. I think that the principle that's been applied by Councillor Breen is a valid one, because obviously we are paying for staff out of different budgets, and we should be apportioning it correctly. But we, in my view, I wouldn't have a view what each member of staff was doing. And the only way that you could do that is, sorry, there are 2 ways you could do it. You'd either get in an external resource to monitor, do time and motion, or alternatively you would get logbooks done by all the staff as they do the work. I'm not championing either of those 2 options. because the work's got to be done. I just want to pick just one specific point about is the list complete in terms of market assistant, social media officer, and museum assistant. Well, all of those are maybe good things to discuss, but the place of that probably should be done is in the HR committee, with a view on the budget available to resource and thing. I don't think it's a finance and general purposes place to debate staffing of the council staff.
I'm slightly confused here. Were you able to discuss this with Councillor Breen? Because you've said, I think a few minutes ago, that in your view, these percentages are a pretty good indicator.
Yes.
And were you able to speak to Councillor Breen about that? Because he's saying down here, our proposed hours correct. If you're not fond of all that information, I really don't know who else would be.
Yeah, so basically, I'm full-time, the RFA is full-time. All these hours are true reflection. Assistant clerk 30 hours, museum coordinator full-time, reception administration 25, property manager full-time. We don't currently have a full-time caretaker.
No.
Part-time caretaker 30 hours, cleaner 15 hours, and the guildhall assistant full-time. So those are, yes, correct.
So
those hours.
you brought, so it's not it's a case of then point B, 2B is correct.
Yes.
2C is also correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how we've, in the main, and obviously what you need to factor in as well is there are peaks and troughs during the year.
Of course.
We'll be doing more STC than Tomlins Fund and vice versa. So I think it's not an exact science, it can't be, unless we spend part of our working week keeping records, which I'm not an advocate of,
No.
and I don't think it's going to help anyone.
I'd be surprised if Councillor Breen was.
Okay.
But that's, so if he's really saying that, do we agree these are right? These are right. By the sound of it, our two officers are saying they are right, so why don't we just accept it? Why are we taking to say anybody else?
Councillors.
Well, yes, I mean, very briefly, it seems to me that if the staff are comfortable with this percentage reflection of the broad balance of their work through a fairly typical year, then we stick with it. I don't think anything much would be gained by asking for a huge and detailed exercise to log this day by day. If staff feel comfortable with this assessment of how they're doing things, then I think we can proceed on this basis.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at this list and to me it seemed about right. My only thought was maybe the property manager could be spending more on STBF assets, etc. But it swings and roundabouts, because if the precept doesn't pay for this, then the Tollbridge fund has to pay. So either way, it's like pushing a sponge, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I propose that we accept the current percentages allocated under each heading and move on.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll second that.
That's my proposal.
I'll second that.
Okay.
I'd like to abstain on this one. Just because I think it isn't an exact science, and I think if you want to accept this as a comfort blanket that can go ahead, then that's okay.
Okay, so is all in favour of that? I mean, I think it's something we can come back to.
Yeah.
Sorry, all in favour?
Best estimate at the time.
One abstention. Yeah. It's something we can come back to in future.
Yeah.
Chair, could I just ask in relation to item 9, are we going to actually discuss the points arising in relation to what we're asked for in terms of non-monetary contributions?
I'll come on to that
You will.
next, if that's okay. So yeah, now item 9, we've had Abby come earlier to talk to us. So the proposal I made when she was here was that she should write to the town clerk with a specific list of desires, if you like, and that there should then be a meeting with the property manager between the Folk and Ale and the council to talk about their requirements. So I'm prepared to propose that.
Well, I do have one concern about possible damage to council property. Both to, I mean, if we offer the use of tables, for example, and gazebos, I mean, the Folk and Ale is a very popular festival, and things can be banged into, and dropped, and all the rest. So I'm just wondering how we would cover that.
Well, I think that's something for the property manager to discuss with them at the time, whether it requires a deposit or
Yes.
some kind of insurance or guarantee.
Well, we have signed off guidance that includes the payment of deposit by all
for the full
hirers,
Mm.
including
But they're not actually hiring those items,
No,
are
no.
they?
the community organisations have to pay a deposit for the use of the forecourt, so there will be a
But
retained
that
amount.
doesn't include the tables and.
No, exactly. I mean, it could just be extended to include any items provided by
Yeah.
Yes.
the town council.
Well,
on
But
the
it's a
day.
good point, I think that's a good point, that should be
Yeah.
stated in the
Yes.
agreement.
Yes.
That's what I'm just saying. I think Councillor Anderson's got a very good
Yeah.
point here,
Yeah.
and I think this is the place to discuss it.
Mm.
We can hand it on to the property manager,
Yeah.
but the property manager joined us in August, and so he's not even been here for a year. He doesn't even know the events.
No.
He doesn't know what's happening. All of the people in this room do.
Mm.
Councillor Anderson's got a very good point, and I'm not being anti-events, but the problem is up until now, events organisers have come to us and we've said, yeah, that's okay, have the electricity, yeah, how many tables and chairs do you want, you can have those, we'll give you a caretaker to set it all up.
Mm.
Our gazebos, I'm very proud of our gazebos, and I think our gazebos are even better than Deal's gazebos. I think they're really top market gazebos. I'm really proud of our market, and I think it's fantastic. And as Councillor Anderson's pointed out, is, you know, we're going to lend this equipment to them. There isn't any provision, you know, there's a deposit for the use of the forecourt, but there's not for the equipment. And I think this is a very valid point, and we need to cover it, because even for the forecourt, in the 1940s event that we had earlier this year, there was a list, you know, of massive issues. They've never been cleared up, and you know, I'm not saying it would happen in the Folk and Ale event, but in the 1940s event, it was, sorry,
The 50s event.
50s was it? Sorry, 50s, yeah, beg your pardon. You're correct, Councillor Anderson, Councillor Csuka. Yeah, the 1950s event. And those items have never been cleared up now. And there was a large number of staff hours put in to rectify things, and some of the staff came in the following day and had to clear up defecation and urine and all sorts of things, and it's never been mentioned. And our staff come in after an event and they get on with things because that's what they do, and we need to recognise that these events need to pull their own weight. And with all due respect, if they lose funding from another area, they have to look for it in some other area. So, you know, but it's not for the Town Council, the Tollbridge Fund, to make up for losses by other councils. And I just want us to discuss this and get this right.
Councillor Brown.
This isn't a simple solution, is to give the property manager a full checklist of all of the items we've discussed yet and any others, particularly someone like yourself, Councillor Wiles, who's been involved in festivals, and just literally have a full briefing session with him. If that means that we need to think again about the size of the deposit, well, that's something coming down the track later. But I just a full briefing session. Here's the checklist. What are we going to do? What are we going to do about it? She was extremely good at trying to nail our colours to the mast, and you know, all good luck to her. But we didn't accept any of it.
So There are certain things that we've already agreed as a council that are chargeable for events, regardless of whether they're community events or not. So electricity is one thing. So I think, and that if we were to give access to free electricity, that actually then is a cost. So it's not a non-financial element. But there are certain things within the list that are non-financial, save the fact that damage would have a cost. So there could be, if we move forward on those particular aspects, build in some contingency to protect the council. And that's how I prefer it. I think we should strip out those things that actually do have a cost. It was flagged up about the staffing. We may have a cost attached to that. So we should work through that. And I don't think the property manager is the person to go off and do the investigation, but we still, as a group of people on this committee, still have responsibility for guiding and deciding.
Agree totally.
Councillor,
Yes, thank you.
Pennington and Councillor.
Yes, thank you. I'm a bit shocked to hear what happened after the 50th festival. I take on board the point made earlier by Councillor Carter that this is setting a precedent. It's not simply a deal to be negotiated with the Folk and Ale. It's going to have much wider implications, and I think we should take our responsibilities really and try and sort something out that will be fair to everyone. I do think we don't want to deter these events, and I hope that by talking it through with them we can reach an agreement on what we can do for them and what we can't do for them. I agree that there are risks here for the council, and I don't think we should go into it lightly. As with everything, we can review it for next year, but I wouldn't like things to go set off on the wrong path this year and us have to clear up the mess in a year's time.
Can I, in terms of the 50s, if there were those problems, and I heard those reports, I don't know if they've made a booking or applied to book for next year, but surely we should be saying to them, hold on a minute, either we don't want you back, or if you come back,
This is what you're going to
this
do.
is your final last chance saloon. If it happens again, you won't be back again. In terms of equipment, from memory, the deposit's £250 for the forecourt. Surely we can say, we can agree to tweak that. If equipment is provided on top of that, we make the deposit £500 or £1,000.
Yes.
That wouldn't cover one gazebo, would it? £250 for.
Do you want them to give 10,000 as a deposit?
Wow.
Where does it stop?
Putting this or somewhere else.
I think we're trying to find solutions too quickly. Let's we're doing a measured, stepped way. For example, they will have insurance themselves, so we need to have a conversation about what that covers. So there's a number of aspects to this that we should just move forward on. I think the principle should be that we're here to support the events that we see that really make this town tick in a best way possible, that whilst we still protect the assets, which all of this falls within, of the council.
Exactly. We're here to work in partnership with them where we can.
Exactly.
And it's absurd to say they have to bring in their own
Oh,
tables and chairs if we've got them in the building.
Of course. But Councillor Pennington actually raised a very valid point. Is all of these items that we would be lending to them, what is the cover on those items? So, for instance, if a gazebo collapses because there's a fault with that gazebo, who's at fault if somebody has an accident? Likewise with a table, if one of the tables has got some of the legs that are loose, that table collapses and a child is underneath the table, who is liable for that? We've lent it in good faith, but who's covering for those accidents that could possibly go wrong? And I'm not being alarmist here, I'm just making sure that at the end of the day, when somebody, this forecourt out here, it's amazing. Do you know, I think we had 2 people fall over, trip or have falls on the forecourt, and then this forecourt was completely repaved, costing £1.3 million, And as a lot of people said, that was 1.3 million you shouldn't have spent. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. What I'm saying about is the equipment, is Councillor Pennington hit on that. If this equipment is put forward, you know, who is liable for that equipment as well?
Well, I'm assuming it will come under their public liability insurance,
Yes.
just as if a stall
That's what we need to check, because we do need,
catches fire.
I suppose we need to be careful in the sense that we already are on a very regular basis doing things with people, you know, lending stuff, etc. So if we're not doing it right, we need to not do it. We need to do it
I
right
agree,
in all
across the
aspects.
board, yeah, we do.
Yeah, so let's-
Those risks.
Hold on, can we, I think Councillor Carpenter
I
wanted to.
think,
No,
I think
okay.
we covered, yeah.
The risks, oh sorry,
It's
sorry.
only carry on, it's to do, well, you're already talking about the risks, that's why I was asking.
Well, the risks must surely apply to the markets
Yes.
now,
Yeah.
every day. So if we haven't got an answer to that, then we should have. It comes back to my point. We need to give the property manager a thorough briefing on the concerns we've got. But it is, I suggest, his responsibility to come back with a plan and say, my advice to you is do X, Y and Z, but not A, B and C. And then as a council, we can then decide, do we include A, B and C or not?
Yeah.
And I think he's the professional,
Yeah.
give him that. Some of the risks that have been raised are risks we have every single day. And as I say, every time you put a market stall up, those risks exist. So nothing is different, I suggest. No,
There's a danger of going down the
exactly.
Breen show route where you don't do anything because you think that.
And there are one or two things we should be able in this group to say actually that shouldn't be pursued by the property manager. So for example, free electricity. Well, actually we've signed off
Yes.
guidance that it is clear that, you know, we shouldn't be overturning that guidance because that applies to anybody who makes a booking.
So that's
So that's my personal view. That's, yeah, and there is a non-cost to the council if we give it free. So it's not a non-financial cost to us.
So,
I would like to just differ, sorry, with Councillor Black because it is different. It is different. So I've attended both, and when you go to a market, you've got gazebos up, and you've got people just milling around the gazebos, and you've got people setting up on the tables. They're putting their goods on the table, and that's it. It's a counter. But in an event where there's any alcohol, it completely changes everything. And I've been to some events, the Broadstairs Hokenell one, where I've seen people dancing on top of the tables and things like that. Now I'm not saying that happened here, but if it does and it collapses and two people get broken ankles, that's all I'm saying. It is different in the factor that you don't have perhaps 150, 200 people under the influence of alcohol wandering around the market buying bread and cotton and
That's sure of
We're never sure about that.
but that's why these events have stewards and
Yeah.
security guards.
And they have a specific license, and they don't pay the license. They ain't going to get it if you can.
Councillor Anderson.
Yes, I would also like, I mean, I'm in favour of these events, but I'm a half empty person. And I'm thinking about the use of the loos downstairs because, you know, I mean, I can see why they want to use them. And it does seem, you know, that they should be available to the public, but at the folk name, I'm just rather concerned about, again, about damage, mess, all the rest.
Sorry, but nothing will ever happen if we keep going down this road.
I
We
know,
have to
but
support
I
these
think we do,
events.
yes, we have to, but they are asking for us to open the
Well,
loos downstairs.
they're signing an agreement, aren't they, with
Yeah.
us
And
about
sorry, on the toilets,
Mm.
don't forget that we have a responsibility for the toilets that would be used if we didn't open up the door, and they are not accessible. They're not.
no.
So
Yeah.
actually, if there's damage, it could just as easily happen there.
Mm.
As well, Claire. So,
But on the other hand, they hire portaloos, so it's their
Yeah.
responsibility.
Yes, but
They will
that's-
hire portaloo during the day anyway.
Yeah.
Yes,
So-
but what this person said, and I can't remember her name, I'm sorry, was that one of the costs they could cut is the hire of Portaloos.
Well, that's
If
half
we
the
made
event.
our loos available.
Exactly, yeah, if you organise an event, you put all that into consideration. You're planning, so you need everywhere you have portaloos, health and safety, you have first aid on site, all these events go. I mean, Paul and I have run the Christmas live for 15 years.
Well, no, more recent than that. Just to give you a bit of an example of the background to this, Daniel and I, we are part organisers of the classic car event at the school, and the school said on no account could the classic car event use any of the facilities of the school or any of the property of the school. When we hire that for £2,500, that field, all we get is the field. We're not allowed to use the school's toilets, we're not allowed to use any of their furniture, we're not allowed to use their electricity. So as event organisers for the major classic car event for Sandwich, we get in generators, we get in portaloos, we get in stewards, we get everything like that. And it's a part of our overheads for the classic car event. And we wouldn't expect the school to leave the doors open and let people wander in and out.
But we are a town council with a responsibility to community events. The school doesn't have that.
Yeah,
May I suggest that she did, I did say she'd kneel back, Councillor Master. It's an opening negotiating point.
Yeah.
We should not be doing this negotiation, which is now what we're getting into. Surely we should leave it to our professional property manager, fully briefed with our concerns, such as, well, we said no to electricity, and for him to come back up to us with a full list and to say, we decided, do we have A, B and C, or do we just go for X, Y and Z? And that's using the professional skills he's got, not us trying to do it for him.
So I would come back to my first proposal, which is that Abby Taylor has gone away and she's been asked to write to the town clerk with her specific requirements. We get that letter, she has a meeting with the property manager who is fully briefed by the town clerk on our concerns, which have been raised tonight, and Julian comes back to the town clerk or to us as required to talk about additional requirements, increased deposits, signing in blood, etc., as the case may be. So that's my proposal.
Second that.
So
Yes.
you happy to agree that?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
One abstention. So is that okay?
Yes.
And can I just say, I think Councillor Ungerson is very, very fortuitous in what she's saying, because the items that she flagged up, we've had from the 1950s event, and there's been no recompense. There's been no recompense.
But those problems have not come back here that I'm aware of.
No, unfortunately,
So it's
they
all
weren't.
been
They were not
discussed
flagged up
internally.
here, but it's almost as if Councillor Ungerson has got, psychic powers.
Maybe she-
You're highlighting the things that the town clerk raised with me after the 1950s event, and I was absolutely shocked.
But perhaps in future, what we need is a kind of wrap-up meeting, a wrap-up item at the end of the year's event to say, what went well, what didn't go well,
I mean, there are things that didn't go wrong every single event.
Yeah.
I could sit here and
That's never come here, has it?
No.
We haven't
No,
discussed it.
it's all coming out now. It's all coming out now. You're hearing what's actually truthfully occurring
But
and what the staff are having to work
But
with.
if we had that, we could say, okay, last written warning to this event, or as the case may
that
be.
could be all of them.
Or-
That would be all of them. There's been different, I could give you different examples with every single one of them, where there has been something that's not very, not very nice to deal with, or, people being sick to the extent where, somebody's wading through that to actually clean a public toilet. That's what happened with the event that you're hearing about tonight.
So are you saying we should have no events whatsoever on the
No,
forecourt?
I'm not saying that. That's why I haven't been negative in coming to you with the negatives. We're just getting on with it, as the mayor said. That's what
Can I just raise a matter?
We shouldn't stand for any nonsense.
Can I just raise a matter here? Sorry, which has been totally forgotten and missed out of. I'd like to ask the town clerk about the Feastable company and what she thinks about them in comparison to the other event organisers. because I've noticed myself, and I do this surveillance when I come down to see these events, and I noticed that the Feastable seem to get all these factors right. I'm not saying they get all of them right, but they get a large majority of them right, and the Feastable events are exceptionally well managed and well organised, and they cover things, and that's because they've been doing them for years and they know what they're doing, and they're able to cover their outgoings by charging the people that are making the money, which is the stallholders. That's what you should consider. Ask the town clerk now, any one of you, in comparison. The Feastable.
Only that they are a very good organisation. They're very easy to deal with. They take the responsibility on. I don't know whether that, because obviously there's a challenge when you are organising community events and you're using volunteers, you're not paying people, that is a difference.
Exactly.
And I think that's reflected at times
100%.
because there is not that responsibility there.
Spot on.
And I think, you know, because I've organised events myself, you know, it is a huge challenge, and if you don't have the right setup of personnel on the day, it can quickly unravel. And you know, that's part and parcel of
The problem with that is that Zoom events would not be able to put on an event like the Folk and Ale Festival.
Why?
They do
Would they?
a similar festival in London, as I've seen it on their advertising. But just rather than completely glossing the Zoom events as to be admired and promoted above the others, where we started on this conversation, if we roll back about 4 months or so, it was about the Guildhall forecourt and the damage to it. The Zoom events, only on their first festival did they not leave any damage in terms of staining, etc. The subsequent events did do that, so they also have contributed to the issue we've had with the state of the forecourt, unfortunately. But that's different from relationships with, you know, how they present themselves, how they engage with. That's a very different matter.
and they are paying £300 a day.
Yes, and helping 300 people a day.
Exactly. I
So-
think that's point.
Two comments on that. One is that Zoom is not popular in all quarters of the
Yes.
town, as we all know.
Why is that? Sorry, I'm not aware of why.
Well, the outcry from a whole number of traders when it was
Some
first
traders were very
proposed.
unhappy.
There was a tremendous hoo-ha.
And within the council.
I didn't have any
Well,
feedback
there
at
was.
all.
I'll talk to you. And the second point is that SCA now has a new leadership, new committee.
It does.
So hopefully we can develop a more professional working relationship with them.
Yeah.
And going forward, perhaps we need a kind of roundtable meeting where some of these past issues can be aired and the town clerk can make it clear that they need to buck up their ideas. Anyway, we've agreed the
So we're
way
done.
forward on this, so I propose we move on to the next item. Thank you for that robust discussion. Item 10 is Business Plan 25-27. Councillor Wiles to provide a verbal update on the development of a business plan for the council. So the council did have a business plan, I recall, 3 or 4 years ago, but that's fallen into has lapsed rather. For the last 2 years of this current administration, we haven't really had a business plan, and I think that has caused certain problems in terms of not having a clear focus on what our priorities are. It's had caused problems for the town clerk and the staff because they get multiple requests from all kinds of people, councillors and others, saying this is a priority, and it's hard for staff to respond to that when the council itself doesn't have a clear list of priorities. So the proposal I've looked at with Councillor Csuka is really to develop a business plan, a fairly brief business plan, not too long, but with maybe 10 clear priorities for the last 2 years of this administration, so that we can start from May onwards, and that would help us as a council. It would also help the town clerk to be able to say, sorry, this is not a current priority, you'll need to talk to my line manager, if you have a problem with that. So it helps the staff to defend their work as well, if we have clear priorities. So I'm proposing that we bring something to probably March or April committees next year that can, well really it would need to commence from April onwards for 25/6 and 26/7. And I'll send round an email to all councillors. I'll ask for thoughts and comments and ideas, but I'm happy to write this myself with the town clerk and the Councillor Csuka, and to put something together. As I say, it won't be a really long document. It will be fairly brief, but it will help to hopefully crystallise our thoughts and ideas about where we're going. So that's my proposal.
Yeah.
Councillor
Yes,
Pennington first.
Sorry.
No, you-
Yes, thank you. I fully support the concept. I think it's an important sort of framework for us to do our work in. So I look forward to that. I would hope we can discuss it in March to give sufficient time for full discussion in the council and to have it up and running from May.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think actually it almost writes itself already in terms of things that we know that we are responsible for. Some of those things are already in train and we just need to be signed up to as a council, we're going to deliver them. So I did a jot down last night when I was just sitting down and I came up with 6 items. We've talked about an asset strategy, we've talked about the HIP, getting that baselined and in place for the council. We've still got an outstanding requirement to respond to the climate emergency. So we should take time next year to think about how we're going to do that. How do we move towards zero energy costs in terms of how we operate as a council. There's a lot of information already out there that we can dip into and use. Reviewing the efficiency of the STBF investments and assets. Whilst that's not council specific, it still is something that we need to do in parallel. We've got to launch the Maddox Fund. We have to get that up and running this year, in next year. So that it almost writes itself, Colin, I think, in terms of what I'm trying to say is what we shouldn't do is end up with 12 new things just because people might think they're more exciting. Unfortunately, we've already got a certain amount of things in the bag that we're carrying around with us.
The danger with this is you have 10 priorities, and within each priority you then have 10
I know.
priorities.
It can be
They
simple,
have
it
to
can be
be,
one-liner.
they can't be too vague, they have to be fairly, smart,
Yeah,
measurable, etc. So it's going to be a challenge to put that into words. But we should have a
That's good. I just want to say I'm fully behind this. I think it's a good idea. Any organisation or business should have a business plan because that steers you as to where you're going and what you're actually undertaking. So I think that's really important. I would like to see full consultation with the full council so that everybody's on board and everybody gets the opportunity to have an input into this. I think the town clerk is key to it because the town clerk is the key holder to the resources and the means in which to make the business plan actually be achieved, for that matter. And then that just brings me on to, there probably is quite a large list of items that all of us in this room would like to see on a business plan. I think what we need to do is we need to do 2 things. One, I've noticed Councillor Wiles has said this is a 2-year business plan, so that gives us those 2 years. I mean, quite a lot of organisations have 5-year business plans. This is a 2-year one, so that's I think that's quite good. That's quite commendable that we're not pushing ourselves too far because things are so changeable now. But the other factor is that I think we need to be aware of perhaps other events that happen. So as we've had up to now, we've had things like COVID and we've had the cost of living crisis and things like that. So we need to be aware of outside external forces as to the delivery of those items as well. So
We could make it a 5-year plan, but that would be contingent upon the
no.
following.
It could action in 2 years.
I wasn't suggesting that at all, because in 2 years' time, as Councillor Black said, the council could change, and it could not. You never know.
You decided why you didn't tell us.
Well, I was just thinking of a song I used to
Yes,
sing as a
no,
child,
no,
and
that's
that's
fine.
really
I've got community engagement that should be on the list as well.
5 years,
Community engagement.
5-year plan, all for the years it took.
Okay, so if you're happy to, I'll propose that we
Second that.
start work on this. I'll consult with the councillors and we'll second that. All those in favour?
Yeah, second that.
And we'll bring something hopefully to the March meeting, a draft. Thank you very much. Last item is date and time of next meeting, 22nd of January. Thank you all very much.
Okay.
Happy Christmas.